Hello, my name is Prieß-Buchheit. I'm a professor of education and didactics, and I'm very honored to speak to you here at the World Forum 4.0. I want to talk today about teaching and learning in times of open science and actually raise the question, how can we teach our future citizens so that they can tackle the crisis which will come along. And so I will lay out some steps into and for the future from an educational perspective. I will lead you through this talk with 4 questions. So questions are: what challenges do we face internationally in teaching and learning? What is teaching and learning in times of open science? What is essential in teaching and learning in times of open science? And how and what can we teach to foster knowledge-based developments? I will conclude that it is really important that quality criteria in the realm of open science and knowledge-based society are met in education. We need inclusive access to as many people as possible. We need to cluster the academic disciplines in another way that it is done right now. We need to close the knowledge gaps which are evident, especially in the realm of open science. We need to be as open as possible to contributions from others. We need to ensure equitable access to as many people as practical. And we need to include mechanisms for a rational dialogue so that students can learn how to rationally argue for something and use evidence to bolster their statement, and to be relevant to each individual in their circumstances, in a sense that everybody who learns actually can learn for their life and for their environment. I bring you today not actually the solution to the questions I just showed you, but I bring you the results from different projects I was involved or coordinated in the last few years. I name them now shortly. These projects are Path to Integrity, the projects I have done with Miller International, the EU versus Virus Hackathon, which we won with the team, and the projects which were done in the Zentrum für Konstruktive Erziehungswissenschaft in Germany. What challenges do we face internationally in teaching and learning nowadays? To start, I brought you a quote from Klaus Schwab, which describes perfectly our situation. So let me read it to you. We are witnessing profound shifts across all industries, marked by the emergence of new business models, the disruption of incumbents, and the reshaping of production, consumption, transportation, and delivery systems. On the societal front, a paradigm shift is underway in how we work and communicate, as well as how we express, inform, and entertain ourselves. So this is the shift we are in, and of course, when society and industry shift, also the educational sector shifts, and also we have to think about how we want to educate or train and teach and how students should learn in the future. So just to get into the topic, a few numbers and statistics. When we look at the educational system worldwide, we find the following key figures. For primary education, we have 89% of all students enrolled in primary education. This number is too low, you all know it, so please help us to raise this number. You cannot see the number because my video on it is, but I'm going to tell you. So also 89% of the enrolled primary school students actually complete the primary education. So we have a loss here, and this too has to be altered. When we look at the secondary education, the numbers decrease. We have 66% enrolled in secondary education, and of this 66%, only 76 actually complete their secondary education. Here also we need to raise this number. Although the numbers were rising in the last decades, yeah, we are still not there where we want to be. When we look back how education was done in the last centuries, we can see that shifts in the educational form, how teaching and learning is done, actually is a normal thing. So when we look into the 18th century, we do have this really specific teaching of the rich and the powerful. So normally there was one teacher and one student. Sometimes there was one teacher and a few students, but all the students were from powerful families and they were rich. So then we have an extreme shift in the time of industrialization, because here actually the educational system changed. People realized that we need to have an educated worker. And so what they did, actually they started the first schools. So we have then one teacher with a really big group of students, and the students learn primary techniques in their culture. We then have another shift, the so-called Industry 2.0, and also this goes along with a shift in the educational system. We can see here now a teacher teaching a really small group, and the small group actually interacts with each other, and knowledge is starting to be a fluid thing. When we look at the situation today, we can say actually that knowledge is not in a sense fluid, but knowledge is there. We have it presented. Yeah. The question is, how can people connect, and our students connect to the knowledge? So how can they learn how to use the evidence which is presented in the internet or in books or in the system, in the societal system around them? So that's why I bring open science into play here. Why open science? Open science actually is the movement which brings knowledge, scientific results and information into the world with a really big and massive power. I brought you here a picture from UNESCO, which says that open science increases scientific collaborations and sharing of information for the benefits of science and of society. And here we connect with the educational perspective. It also says that open science makes multilingual scientific knowledge openly available, accessible and reusable for everyone. And it also says that open science opens the processes of scientific knowledge creation, evaluation, and communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. So what does that mean for the educational sector? Of course, when we have reliable research results and reliable information at hand, yeah, we can use it to teach our students, and also our students can use this information to create new knowledge, or to create the knowledge which is important for their context and their environment. So what is essential in teaching and learning in times of open science? I brought you here a graphic from my wonderful colleague Dick Bourgeois-Doyle. What he did is he connected actually research education and the idea of open science. So we have here the arrow which with RI education, that means research integrity education, and it shows that the movement to use such a lot of information in the educational sector has also pitfalls. So on the left-hand side, we have the pitfall of the scientific pillar, because it can happen, yeah, that researchers actually fail to follow research integrity principles, and that leads to fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, and that leads, of course, to unreliable research results, which we shouldn't use in teaching and learning. On the bottom half, There's also a pitfall from the societal perspective, and here we have the lack of awareness and the use of scientific results, because students, peoples, and citizens still keep on using their traditions and their intuitions and their beliefs, and do not change even their knowledge, and they do not change their behavior according to scientific results, which would help them. So what do we need and what do we have to do? We have to raise public awareness and the use of scientific results in our educational system. We have to start to teach them how to use evidence-based information on the one hand. It's here on the upper level. And on the right-hand side, we also have to teach our future researchers, this is mainly for secondary school education and the higher education sector, to adhere to research integrity principles such as respect, honesty, accountability, and reliability. Both together would actually boost the trust in science, and it would boost the evidence-based social progress. So what is essential in teaching and learning in times of open science? Now I bring you the results. The results I present you here is from last June, where we had an expert meeting on open science. And these experts actually concluded at the end that the most important thing that we have to do is to teach quality criteria, how to produce reliable research results in a sense of open science, so that everybody can access them. So they said that the FAIR principles are the first step, in the sense that we have to teach the FAIR principles, of course, but they're not good enough. It's only a minimum standard. We have to go beyond the FAIR principles and teach quality criteria to support good research which is open and accessible. They also concluded that inclusive access to information and to actually bring your own results in the open is necessary. So they said that it is important to solve discrimination in the open science movement. Examples show that mainly high-performing countries provide money, resources, and infrastructures for open access, and this decreases the chance for people which are not from these countries to bring their results into the open science movement. They also concluded in two other points. They said that we have to cluster the academic disciplines in a different way. They said, quote, we have to rethink distinctive features in academic disciplines such as explicit and tacit research objects, different research methods, and ways research results are disseminated to make peer learning on how to go open easier. Right now it's a scattered place, and the academic disciplines and their clustering right now doesn't help the open science or the teaching towards open science, so that we really have to rethink the structure. We also have to close knowledge gaps. They are quite obvious, and the latest results from Path to Integrity show that, for example, less than, I think it was 30% know what the FAIR principles are. So we need to guide future researchers towards open science and others towards how to use open science and the information which is presented there. From another project, the project from the EU versus virus hackathon, I bring you the results on how we should develop teaching tools. And we concluded there with 4 principles, and I think they are really important to be followed in the future. So the project member concluded on, it is important to be as open as possible to contributions from as many people as feasible when you develop an educational tool. You need to ensure equitable access to as many people as practical, and you need to include mechanism for a rational dialogue, and you need to be relevant to each individual in their circumstances. You see, the principles actually, which I already presented as in what should we teach, are repeated here because I am convinced that we need to do it the way we want them to actually act in the future. So now I present you actually material which you can use and which are open. So these are open educational resources which followed the principles which I just showed you. So we have here the material from the project Path to Integrity. It's the Path to Integrity Learning Card program. And the Path to Integrity Learning Card program has different learning units on the topic of how to use reliable research results as a citizen and how to produce reliable research results. So there is a series for secondary school students, there is a series for bachelor students and for master students, and a series for postgraduates interdisciplinary groups. You can find all the materials on www.pathtointegrity.eu, and you are free to use them and connect with us and the community of Path to Integrity teachers and trainers. I also show you here the Path to Integrity campaign. We have different videos, we have leaflets, posters, and booklets which describe the why research integrity is important and what are actually the cornerstones which we have to take that our research community establishes or fosters reliable research results. Here too, these are materials for postgraduate students, but also for secondary school students, as you can see on the leaflet here. You can see it, but when you go on the website, you can read it. You can have a closer look. This leaflet is about, okay, how for secondary school students, how should I write my first thesis, or my first thesis when I use information from the internet. So these were my 8 steps actually, how we can go into the future and how we teach our students and how they can learn to tackle the crisis which will come up in the future. So my main theme is we need to teach them how to use evidence and how to rationally argue for different steps to develop techniques to handle the crisis. Again, I think it's really important that we teach them quality criteria, how to be an open researcher in the open science movement. We need to be as inclusive as possible in the open science movement. We need to rearrange the existing cluster of academic disciplines so that we can push it forward, and we need to close the knowledge gaps, for example, on the FAIR principles. On the other hand, for everybody from primary school, secondary school to up to higher education, when we develop new educational tools, we need to be as open as possible to contributions from others. It's not enough that we need to integrate different perspectives into our educational tools. We need to ensure equitable access to as many people as practical. We did massive online courses with more than 200 students from all over the world, and I can tell you it worked, and the students had a really high learning development in these courses, and they really enjoyed to be connected to other international students. We need to include mechanism for rational dialogue. Rational dialogue is going to be the keystone in the future and be relevant. Our materials needs to be relevant to each individual in their circumstances and not for us or for a specific group. So again, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here at the World Forum 4.0. It was an honor for me to be here as a speaker. My name is Julia Prieß-Buchheit. At the time, I'm the CEO of the Zentrum für konstruktive Erziehungswissenschaft and a professor at Kiel University. If you are interested, please reach out to me and my team. We are always looking for cooperations and collaborations, and I think together we will be able to go the next steps into the future and for the future. Thank you very much.